And the questions that we're going to think about today are, number one, who is my customer? Where is my customer? How do I engage that customer? And I'm going to back up some of these questions with a few floral industry statistics. We'll go through together and come up with some customer profiles, and I'll touch a little bit on the advantages and disadvantages of niche markets. So just a little bit about me. For those of you who are returning to the series or know me in person, probably already know that I'm an educator for CCE Delaware County, specializing in horticulture. I've been here 6 years. Prior to that, I was actually a sewing pattern author for about 12, 15 years. I made doll clothes for high-end designer dolls, including Marie Osmond's doll. So it's a little bit of a career segue, I guess. And prior to that, I was a research molecular biologist. So taking a lot of twists and turns, but one of the things that I've seen through the years is the way you promote yourself, your programs can be all about you because that's the person you know the best, right? But for the sake of yourself and your business, you really need to shift towards thinking about the customer and their needs. Another place where I've gotten a little bit of experience in this realm is my family actually owns a small scale bakery. And we do some marketing through social media, sell at farmers markets, and we definitely have that pretty much typical customer. We certainly have customers from all over the place, all walks of life, but if we really drill down on it, we could come up with a profile of our customer, that person who values our product, our values, and comes back again and again. So once you find that person and they're on your mind with everything you do, making business decisions, it makes it easier and more profitable. Okay, so marketing, like I said, that's not my background, but I find it fascinating, and it is absolutely a science. It's based on numbers and trends. It can be documented, observed. It's fascinating. For those of you who binge watch Mad Men, like I did a few years ago, Madison Avenue is full of people that this is their full-time job, and they do it from products ranging from cars to sodas to cut flowers. And in fact, there are several groups in the United States and internationally who research trends and numbers for flowers. And most of these data, of course, come from what I call big flower, the importers, the promoters, but they're translating more and more towards specialty cut flowers, the things that we're doing. So the good news that I'm seeing across the board is total spending on floral products has increased over the past few years. Even with the pandemic, total spending on floral products grew to $46.6 billion. And we're seeing much larger percentage of that being US grown floricultural crops. That was 16%, which is huge because, of course, back in the olden days, most of the flowers were domestic, right? And then as we became more globalized, industrialized, most of them were imported from, nicer climates year round and places where workers can be paid very little, and there's not as much emphasis on good practices, etc. So consumers are really starting to take note of things like sustainability, carbon footprint, etc. So I believe that not only are we seeing this great movement within cut flower growers and local growers, but we're also seeing a shift in consumer preferences at the same time. So here's the great news for those of you who also sell seedlings as part of your operation. More than a third of what's considered green floral products are actually bedding plants. Those sell like crazy. There are also perennials and potted flowering plants, house plants, for example. We're seeing a lot with succulents and other house plants. They've taken off like crazy, especially with the pandemic. But of that huge umbrella of green floral products, cut flowers are 360 million in sale. And also there, of course, with the increase in the amount of domestic flowers, there's an increase in the number of growers. And what's not reflected in that are what I think most of us are the flower growers doing less than $100,000 in annual sales. And those are numerous. So that's great seeing small business owners making an impact in this huge industry. Imports did increase at the same time, which is to be expected as an industry grows as a whole. They have increased, but we can definitely do our part to stay relevant within this large field. And things are definitely changing. When I was a kid, if you wanted a flower arrangement or a corsage or a funeral spray, you went to a florist, right? There was a florist in every town, multiple florists, in fact, every road. But you don't see that so much anymore. In our little town of Delhi, New York, my understanding is that we had 3 florists around Main Street at one point, and we are down to 0. All the shops have closed up. The florists have retired or moved on to different jobs. We do have a new cute little shop in another town that is selling both vintage items and flowers and some agricultural products. So that's exciting. You're definitely seeing that it's not that the flowers aren't there, they're just being sold different places. So why is the floristry profession changing? Part of it is just the pay isn't so good. You know, if you're working for a flower shop or you're in business yourself, the average salary is only $29,000 a year, which equates to less than $15 an hour. So not a lot of people itching to get into that when you can make $20 an hour at Pizza Hut, right? It is exciting that it is a woman-dominated field, and believe it or not, this wasn't always the case. Back in the days, it used to be the florists were male, actually, but then there are some very, very talented men in the floral industry. The average age of an employed florist is 47 years old, which I'm 50, so 47 seems kind of young, but still that's pushing towards retirement age. And so are these florists going to be replaced by new young florists? Probably not. Probably the industry is just going to shift to more like what we're seeing. And yeah, so the employment is projected to decline 21% in the next 10 years. So what are the challenges? Well, it's like a lot of businesses, labor is a huge expense. And if you can't find skilled people to do what you need them to do at an affordable rate, the industry has to change. Also, just the cost of materials is rising. Anything from the cost of the flowers themselves to the packaging, vases, etc. So it's hard to maintain high profit margins, even when you're charging high prices. A lot of competition from supermarkets and even online retailers now. And then acts of nature. We just went through a big national or international pandemic, right? Where weddings just halted. People weren't spending as much money, period. It just had a huge impact. Same with weather. If you live in a climate zone, or even you are dependent on flowers from another country, that can have a significant impact on your sales and production. You can't anymore request a certain flower buying wholesale because it might not be available. At least that was the case a few years ago, and I think it's gotten a little bit better, but it's certainly changed. Shipping and transportation, that's actually been something we have to really consider in our bread business. Do we want to spend a lot of time delivering and driving around? What is our range? Because that ultimately adds up to time of labor and also fuel and wear and tear on our vehicle. So, and here's the reality. In the typical month, only 5% of the population buys flowers. And you think about other agricultural products like milk or lettuce greens, things like that. Much higher percentage of the population actually buy those. Whether they're local or sourced from abroad, there are more people buying them, and that usually trickles down to more people buying them from you. So let's just think about the reasons why people buy flowers. 77% of the time, it's because they have a reason, either a holiday, a birthday, I'm sorry, but, which is a lot of the male spending actually is I'm sorry. But really, it's only 23% of people who are just buying them just because they're beautiful. And we really want to see that increase, right? We want a lot more people excited about everyday flowers and making them part of their lifestyle. So the top reasons for purchasing flowers are actually birthdays and anniversaries. And I thought for sure it was going to be these big holidays, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. But it's exciting to hear that at least these everyday occasions that don't necessarily happen outside of our growing window, those are justifications for buying flowers. And you can look at this little chart I grabbed from the Floral Purchase Tracking Study, which was done in 2016. It's really kind of divided up different reasons why people buy flowers, but it's neat to see that a lot of them are because of they want to thank somebody, decorate their homes, beautify. I think, the funeral segment is a little bit, I don't even want to say controversial. It's hard, right? Anything to do with death and transitions is tough, but I think there are huge opportunities there for people in that arena. Okay, so let's look at these traditional flower holidays, and those of us who grow in the Northeast during our normal growing season are looking at this, shaking our heads like, okay, the only holiday that falls during my growing season is Father's Day. And, let's normalize buying dad's flowers, right? But really, that's probably not where you're going to make your money. So unless you're doing some extreme things with season extension or selling subscriptions for these different holidays, really these aren't for us. But it is interesting to look at, where the flower shops make their money, their busiest holidays. Okay, so let's dive into some consumer data. Not to get too many numbers on these, but I thought these were really interesting. These data are from the Society of American Florists. So they're probably spinning this a little bit to kind of normalize the feelings that people get about flowers. That's really, what motivates and excites people more than a fresh bouquet. The textures are amazing, the scent, it's so associated with love and emotions. So of course, 65% of Americans feel special when receiving flowers, but then you got to be kind of sad that there's a percentage, 25%, I can't do math today, 35% don't feel special. Who are these people that don't feel special? But definitely it's a way to change how somebody's feeling about themselves. And they feel like flowers have a special meaning, unlike any other gift. 60% of Americans. 77% do it to be thoughtful. That's so nice. Or 77% think the people who gave them flowers are thoughtful. How nice. I want to be thought of as thoughtful. The color of the flower adds the impact of the gift, the sight and smell. But I love this. This is super impactful. 92% of women say best reason to receive flowers is just because you're special, the flowers are special. It's great. Okay, I love this. Nearly 4 in 10 Americans say florists have helped them in a past or current relationship. Why be a therapist, right? You don't need that. Just be a florist. You can help a lot of people. And it's as good to give as to receive. Okay, so 80% of Americans say receiving flowers makes them feel happy, but 88% feel even better giving flowers. Okay, and let's get into the floral appreciation by generation. I'm sure they had rankings, you know, do you appreciate flowers? Is your appreciation of flowers high, medium, low? Well, the baby boomers, 72%, still a pretty high percentage, highly appreciate flowers. But as, and Gen X, 73%. But do you see a trend here? Gen Y, our millennials, 76%. So it seems like the appreciation of flowers is increasing. Okay, let's dive a little deeper into those age factors. And I'm constantly seeing things on social media about the kind of the battle of the generations and the differences. But I mean, and the reality is we have experienced different things at formative times in our life. So baby boomers might have been more likely to have a parent who went through the Depression. They've seen war. They've been more likely to go through poverty. So, but that said, a lot of them are very established and have owned their homes for many years and have disposable income. So here's some facts about baby boomers. If they're going to purchase flowers, it's usually with the intent of gift giving. It's not so much about treating themselves, it's to give to someone else. And they tend to prefer mixed flower bouquets over straight bunches. And I apologize for the ringing phone. It'll go away in a second. They also have the highest expectations of the flowers and the most emotional connection to them, probably memories of their grandmother or buying flowers from the local flower shop when they were young people. However, they are a lot more sensitive about cost when they're shopping for flowers. And there are several reasons for this. Again, maybe coming from times of scarcity, or also maybe from just seeing prices rise over time. I tend to think in like 1980s, 1990s terms when I'm shopping. So I see a pair of jeans that's over $19.99 and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. But it's not, you know, there's inflation, just changes in prices for different items. Okay, so those are the baby boomers. Generation X, my generation, the best generation, right? Hi to all you Gen Xers out there. So us Gen Xers are least likely to purchase flowers in person. We don't like going into stores. We don't like talking to people. We're much more likely to buy something online and call it good, right? These are all generalizations, right? And we're going to talk about that when we get into ideal customers. You are just making up this fictional person, but it is based on real data. And generally, Gen Xers are, compared to the younger folks, more financially and societally established. So they are in a better position to purchase flowers. Boy, somebody really wants to get a hold of me. They buy flowers for many purposes, including traditional gifts, pick me up, and home decor. So just gonna throw my phone in the garbage. Okay, good, somebody picked it up. Okay, so yeah, we're more flexible, I guess, in terms of why we would buy flowers, not just for gift giving, certainly, but also we've been taught, treat yourself, make your home beautiful, feather your nest. And now we're getting into that very interesting, amazing Gen Y, which I know a lot of you are here. Hi, Gen Y. We also refer to you as millennials, kind of the 20s and 30s age folks. They are actually most likely to enjoy the experience of purchasing flowers. They love going to farmers markets and to neat little boutiques. And then they also want that interaction of delivering them themselves to the person they're intended for. And overall, you guys are still coming up, right? You're still youngsters. You're less financially stable overall, but you're more giving. Isn't that awesome? So you don't have as much to give, but you're happy to share it. And the millennials are more likely to buy individual flowers than the mixed bouquets. They want to do the arranging themselves or they can appreciate just the aesthetic of one kind of flower. And of the three groups, they're least emotionally attached to the flowers. They haven't developed the nostalgia as much. They know they're nice and their reaction to them is just based in real time. And then we're not even going to get into Gen Z. They're just going to eat the flowers or something and do a TikTok challenge. I have Gen Zers in my home. So let's see, I see something in the chat box. Oh, yeah, I love it. Jenny says, I'm 46 and distinctive gardens is my home away from home. I bet you are their ideal customer, Jenny. We're going to get into ideal customers. Okay, so let's get a little into sales data and check out this look that this young woman has. You know, she's sort of representing all the generations here, right? She definitely likes purple. So, and I did use all stock photos for the most part for this presentation, which sometimes I just go down a rabbit hole of looking at stock photos. They crack me up. Okay, so in this whole big floral industry, what are the consumers buying? A huge chunk of that is outdoor bedding, garden plants, and I'm probably responsible for a good 6% of that myself. But yeah, so there is a whole segment of people who want to do it themselves, who are growing the plants. And then fresh flowers is what we're focused on today, 34%, and flowering green houseplants, 20%. So those are all big chunks of that overall market. And these are things you can absolutely add to your operation if this is something you want to do to expand your customer base. And we'll talk about these sort of niche markets in a bit. Okay, who is buying all the green goods? Not surprisingly, women. 79% actually are buying these, and 21% are men. But when you get into the fresh flowers, actually, more men are buying them. Men are actually getting increasingly interested in home decor, and gifting, of course, has always been traditionally an outlet. Men giving to women or to their partners. That hasn't changed, but it does seem like an increasing number of men are appreciating the aesthetics of flowers. And who are they buying them for? So a whopping 63% are buying these things for themselves, and 30% are gifts. But then when you go to fresh flowers, it flip-flops actually. Only 33% are treating themselves, and 67% are buying for somebody else. So that's good to know when you're targeting your customer. If you do want to increase sort of these self-purchase, everyday flowers, CSA subscriptions, things like that, or if you are going to focus on get this to give to someone else to either take as a gift, a hostess gift, for example, or for an occasion. Okay. So everybody's heard the term demographics, and we tend to focus on demographics just in terms of when we're thinking about the area we live in or the type of customer we want to attract. And so you hear this a lot when you hear from marketers. They group customers into demographic groups. And it's really just all demographics are a group of customers with similar characteristics. It comes from the Greek word demos, for people. Okay, so the typical demographics that marketers look at are age group, income level, educational level, family size, and marital status. But let's get into what's called psychographics. This one's a little bit new to me, even though I think it's intuitive. Everybody thinks about it, but it's really more about behavior of the customers rather than their assets in terms of education or wealth. It's more about how these customers will act in different circumstances. And what's used as a scale, sorry about that, as a scale is the VALSTEM, values and lifestyle segments. And it really scientifically identifies customer behavior by comparing not only the segment's resources, but also their motivation and willingness to adopt new things. And so we are really looking at something that is more of an alternative value added product at this point in agriculture, right? People consider flowers alternative agriculture. More, it's not feeding us, it's more of something that's feeding our souls, right? So the folks who tend to gravitate towards these products that aren't necessarily are not necessities, these are considered high resource. So they have the financial resources and the motivation to pay more from flowers, but they also are going to be your pickier customers, that they are able to do their homework and research the different options and sellers and really narrow down what speaks to them. So let's talk about different types of consumers. And I have 2 pages of these, and the ones on the first page, as a cut flower grower / seller, these are the customers that you're ultimately probably going to try to reach, whether you are doing direct sales or working through a florist or a store. These are people who will most likely end up with your flowers. So at the top of this list are your innovators, who not only have high income, but they're very independent in their thinking and their acting. They are not swayed by what others are doing. They want the finer things in life, but they're on their own terms. It's not to please other people, it's to please themselves. But then you get into your thinkers, who are educated, high resource, and motivated by knowledge. And by well-educated, I don't necessarily mean your traditional university education. It could be just somebody who consumes news, different magazines, social media. There are a lot of different ways to educate yourself. So they're rational decision makers, and they are well informed about what's going on around them. And they're more likely to accept social change as they learn. When they find out something is maybe socially unacceptable or of concern, possibly to the environment, they will make changes in their purchasing behavior just to do what they consider to be the right thing. And then you have your believers, who just go based on what other people are saying, right? They're easily influenced, is a good way to put it. They're more social, not necessarily high resource, and less likely to just accept innovative ideas. But hey, if their friends are doing it or the people they respect, they are into it. So they're really good to do word of mouth marketing too. Then you have your achievers, who are just motivated by achievement, right? They want a brand that's associated with success, and the brand itself is successful. So generally they're high resource, but even if they're not, if a brand is popular, if they're feeling like it's going to raise their social status, they're more likely to adopt that brand. In fact, let's talk about luxury handbags. I've heard that the biggest consumers of luxury handbags are actually people who can't afford them, but they want to give the impression that they are in that higher income tier. They want other people to know it. Whereas the wealthy people, they also obviously have luxury brands and access to these things, but they're a lot more low key, or they're not as hung up on the brand names because they have achieved, right? Okay, so these are the people who are going to probably be more likely to go out and buy farm-raised cut flowers. Okay, but let's get into some other types of consumers that might not be the ones you reach, but could absolutely turn into the ones, or might change over time, right? So you have the strivers, who are low resource. They want to achieve. They have the same values as achievers, but just don't have the money to be an achiever. But these people will work hard and ultimately get where they need to be, or where they want to be. And then you have the experiencers. They have high resources, but guess what? They aren't seeking more stuff. They want to self-express. They want to contribute. A lot of them are young adults. They just want to be different. They want to live life, experience different things. A lot of them are what you would consider early adopters, your influencers, actually, and they will spend money on clothes and other youthful products and services. And as these experiencers age, their preferences and values will change, and hopefully things like cut flowers will be part of their lives. Now, I would fall into this next category. Absolutely. I'm what is a maker. I love to create. I love to grow my own stuff, but I don't necessarily want to part with my money. I wouldn't consider myself low resource, but I'm certainly not rich. So I always go to craft sales and farmers markets with money. I'm like, I'm going to buy something today because I want to buy stuff. But everything I walk by, I could make that, I could grow that, and I could, but I need to let go of that and enjoy some things that other people have made, right? And support other makers. And I always respect that at the farmers market, because there are the vendors who will go and buy things from all kinds of other vendors or barter. And that's a great mindset to be in. And then you've got your survivors. They're low resource and they're not really in a place or mindset to really change. So you could absolutely bring them in as a customer. It's just a matter of getting them in the door. So I just think it's interesting that there are 8 different personality types that we're kind of looking at here. Okay, and I did see a comment in the chat. Jenny said, my husband said he would add, he is a Marine, a war veteran, and those like him have experienced horrible, ugly things. And flowers, natures, and animals bring something beautiful and peaceful to their existence. Absolutely. So you wouldn't think that your target customer would be him, right? But he does have an appreciation for these things. So if it's the right product and the right fit, he could absolutely be your customer. And likely he won't be, though, because he's Jenny's husband and he gets all the beautiful things. Okay. So, and Lindsay touched on this a bit, but there is what is considered the ideal customer, your pie in the sky person who you are, when you think about your marketing strategies and the way you set up your farmers market booth, you are doing it for her. And I'm going to say her just because we've seen the data, it is mostly women, but please don't exclude anybody. You certainly want to be an inclusive seller, make everyone feel welcome, but you do want to have sort of your ideal customer in mind. So what's the difference between your customer base and your ideal customer? We hear the word base so much with politics, it almost has a negative connotation, but base is equated with loyalty, that these are the people that come back again and again, where most of your income comes from, and actually buy from you. And they're not necessarily who you have in your mind as your ideal customer, but sometimes it's hard to get out of your own head and realize who this is. And yeah, so they're the ones that you can count on. But then you've got this kind of fictionalized person who you want to target because they best fit with your brand and are likely to become your customer base and will pay the price you want and enjoy the product that you have. So just a couple things to bring back to your thinking. You are probably not your ideal customer. Whenever I make or grow or do anything, I'm like, oh, I'd buy that. But the reality is I wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't spend the money, or I would say, oh no, I can make or buy that. So again, don't do it for the makers, don't do it for yourself. You want to think about your customer. And also, not everyone is your customer. You know, we want to please everybody, right? And certainly we want to make it accessible to everybody, but you have to realize there are a lot of people who are going to walk right by your product. It's not even going to register on their minds, and there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, when my husband was in the food service industry, he worked for a venue that was starting up and trying to get business. And they wanted to serve a very high-end wedding crowd, and they were getting people who wanted to do chicken barbecues and things like that. And the woman in charge would say, that's not our customer, that's not our brand. And at the time I thought, well, wow, that's kind of dismissive, but the reality is that was probably smart business sense on her part, rather than messing around with something that in her mind that was lower value, not what they wanted to serve, not what they wanted to grow. That was probably a good choice on her part. And he doesn't work there anymore. Okay, so I was just, when I was putting together this presentation, I was thinking about my own business. I sell dried flowers. Actually, I have a micro farm where I grow drying varieties during the growing season. I come home from my job here at Cornell Cooperative Extension. I put on dirty clothes. I go out and I pick flowers for an hour, dry them, and I don't mess with them till, probably about a month before Thanksgiving. Then I start putting together crafts and arrangements. My main outlet is one holiday show, actually, because it fits with my personality. I don't necessarily want to be behind a booth selling anything. I'm just a little too hyperactive. So I put it in the sale. They sell really well, and it fits with the venue. It fits with the audience. So who is my ideal customer? Who am I envisioning buying my flowers? And this is based on nothing, right? This is just who I envision this person to be. So Julianne, I've named her. She's a 50-year-old single woman. She's a professor. She's saved her money. She's worked very hard. She has a primary residence in a beach cottage, which you will hopefully want to decorate, right? She enjoys entertaining and travel. So she's going to need flowers at the different events she hosts. She loves nature and gardening, but she's busy teaching physics. She doesn't have time to grow flowers, but she does consume Martha Stewart living. She knows all the different ways flowers can enhance your life. And she knows that she needs to treat herself, and she's willing to spend money on items that fit with her values and personal aesthetic. So that seems a way too incredibly detailed, but that's how they tell you to write ideal customer profiles. So that this is kind of your pie in the sky customer. And if you can rope Julianne in, you can rope in a lot of Juliannes, right? Okay, so I've just kind of come up with a few of the customers that I've seen, and I'd love to kind of get your input and just chime in. Is this your customer? Is this something you've seen? What are some characteristics? So I just have 5 or 6 of these, and let's have fun with this. So the locavore. This is somebody I see at farmers markets who goes out of their way to go to the farmers market every week for their vegetables, different craft items, just to be part of the local scene, but also to buy something with a low carbon footprint and support the local economy. Who wants to tell me some more characteristics of the locavore?
They're loyal. I have found they're very, very loyal, and they will be on every social media outlet tagging your farm, which is excellent for me.
Absolutely. And they're the ones influencing the ones who are more interested in kind of being influenced, right? And yep. Say, I want to be like this person, because generally locavores are very health conscious, right?
Yeah.
And, lead good lifestyles. And okay, and Hannah said, high resource, more likely to share with friends. Absolutely. And honestly, one of the best ways to market your flowers at a farmer's market is to get one of your attractive locavore friends to walk around with a bouquet. Have that aesthetic with your market bag slung over your shoulder and an armful of gorgeous blooms. And in fact, that's one of the comments we get at our farmers market for the community garden that I run. People come and buy flowers just because they saw somebody else walking around with them. Anyone else want to comment about the locavores? I keep trying to call them locavores, but they are locavores. So yeah, this is a customer that you want and you want to keep. And in general, because of their loyalty, they are kind. They're not going to throw you under the bus for a mistake or maybe not having what they want in stock. They understand the realities of local farming. All right, if there's no more comments on the locavore, you move on to, and these are just profiles that popped up in my head based on experience, not just making up fictional people. The Pinterest mom. Who's a Pinterest mom? I'm a Pinterest mom. But yeah, they are obviously have children. They want to do the right thing environmentally, usually, but most importantly, they want to provide an amazing experience for their family. They're not so much focused on themselves, but on how their aesthetic can kind of make a better world for the people in their home. She usually is health conscious because there's all these great recipes that she's been pinning, right? And likes to be social because a lot of times these moms most things revolve around their children. So they go to the farmer's market or the little grocer down the road. And this is where they get to interact with other moms and just get out of the house. Any commentary on the Pinterest mom? And they are very likely to be influenced by what they see coming through their friends, but also social media as a whole. And, as they get younger and younger, the channels where you're learning, where they're consuming media are different, things like TikTok and YouTube. So if the Pinterest mom is your customer and you're gonna maybe help her have everyday flowers in her home, maybe do some arrangement demonstrations for her, or think about teacher gifts. For example, say, look at this cute little thing you can do with the flowers and give to the teachers on Teacher Appreciation Week. I think that's during the growing season. Anyone else want to talk about the Pinterest mom?
I actually have something kind of interesting to share because we are Pinterest and they keep track of your audience demographics. And I was kind of surprised to see that the majority of people looking at our flowers were in their 20s and 30s, rather than kind of, more middle-aged but also it's a lot of people on Pinterest are like interested in weddings and wedding flowers and how they can do their own and everything. So I just thought that was interesting. But
that's a very good point. And in fact, a lot of the Pinterest moms were recently Pinterest brides, right? So definitely you want to get your customer in as young as possible and evolve with them. That's a great point. And that's neat about the analytics. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. All you have to do is make your account a business profile, which is free and extremely easy to do. And then they just track the analytics, the audience. It's really cool.
Oh, that's amazing. See, something that you can put into practice right away. Okay, the visitor. So I live in a very rural area that is 3 hours from New York City. And during the summer, we have a lot of folks at Airbnbs or here on day trips that are coming here for the scenery, the local foods, to visit farms, and most importantly, just to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. So one of the misconceptions is that, well, if they're visiting, they're not going to buy anything perishable. But even people here just for a weekend, a lot of times will pick up flowers to decorate their cabin or Airbnb. Or they have other friends that are here. I think half of Brooklyn comes here in the summertime. And so, you know, they're likely to have dinner parties and things like that, where you'll either be gifting flowers or putting flowers on display. Again, they're here because they appreciate natural beauty. Generally, they have high income, if it allows them to get away like that. Any other characteristics of the visitor or anybody else economy very dependent on visitors?
And here in Chester County, we get a lot of visitors, which helps because they want to stop by on all the local farms, because you've got multiple fold, because you've got the Brandywine battlefield, Washington's headquarters, you've got, you know, all that history aspect. You've got Longwood Gardens, which is 15 minutes from us. And then you have in the southwestern part, you have a big Amish population, and everybody who's a visitor wants to see the Amish. So it really, really does help just bringing customers. And these people tend to come to this area every year. So it ends up being a repeat customer for us, which is good. And a lot of people I have noticed, especially those that are retired, they will do that, what I always call the tri or the quad state tour, where they're New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And it's just awesome. You know, I always welcome them. They just making fun of the way we say wash and water. So, you know.
Yeah,
But
so they're in, these are your experiencers, right? They so ways to get them in might involve some sort of hands-on activity or something tied in with the weekend event they're there to visit, or
alcohol and barbecue chicken works here.
Oh my goodness, the finer things in life, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so those are things that certainly you can cross promote with people doing that. I was happy to hear that one of the owners of multiple Airbnbs in our town recommends our little farmers market as a place to go and get flowers and meet people. And yeah, so they usually have quite a bit of disposable income, and they're really seeking those experiences. And that's another whole segment that we will cover a little bit in future talks, but the DIY events are really taking off in popularity. People are just so excited about learning new skills, being around other people, and getting a little something to take home out of that. Okay, who else have I got in here? The Grand Millennial. This is the last one of the profiles I have here, but this is a segment to watch. And these are probably your Pinterest brides that have gotten their first home and are really embracing sort of the cozy cottagecore aesthetic, like they remember from their grandmother. Their Gen X moms didn't mess around with that stuff. We were at work, right? But these Grand Millennials, they have the aesthetic. They're really into beautifying spaces. They are sometimes come from money or have made their own. So that's another segment. Who wants to chime in on Grand Millennials? There's a girl on Facebook who she embraces the coastal grandmother experience. And so she dresses like Diane Keaton, and she always has flowers in her house and Chardonnay. And there's a lot of other young women embracing this aesthetic, and young men too. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're a good demographic here in Chester County too, because this area, we call it the Philly sprawl, all the development, and people are getting really conscientious because everybody wanted to move to Chester County because we're all farms. Well, guess what? When you have Toll Brothers building, you're not going to have your farms anymore. So they are really adamant, and they're the ones that go on the signs, Lanier or Ryan Home signs, and say, we miss the cows, we miss the flowers, we miss, you know. So it's it's nice to see them coming up because, you know, even me being a Gen X, we were always, I'm Cherokee, so it's you respect the ground and nature and don't destroy it because, you know, it's all we've got. But these, millennials are really like out there and being as bold as I've always told, I'm not shy. So, you know, about it. And it's great to see them. And they've been great customers and great allies. And they want to come learn and they want to come help, which is great for me because there's a farm near Philadelphia that does to get free help with pulling weeds. She has a pizza and beer night, and people pay to go to this.
Isn't that great? Yeah, I think I call it like weed dating instead of speed dating.
Yes.
Weed dating, that you come and weed and you might meet the person of your dreams.
Exactly. I was like, I showed my husband. He's like, oh, holy Hannah, we should try doing that. He's like, if I knew things were that easy, I wouldn't have been in the Marine Corps. You know, but
It's just different. It's a different
Yeah.
generation just based on how they've been raised, what their values are, and they check all the boxes as our customers, which is good. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
really, my previous industry with sewing and fabric is really struggling because it was really marketed towards a much older generation for a long, long time. And I would go to Quilt Market, which is the big trade show, and so many of the prints and things like that were geared towards grannies who were interested in Civil War
Yeah.
reproductions, and us young pups, the big bold stuff, were kind of ignored. And so
Yeah.
certainly it's progressed, and they are targeting, but a little bit too late. So I'm glad that flower farmers are definitely conscious.
Yeah.
We do need to serve. And also, I heard something really neat the other day that everyone over 40 really needs to have a mentor in their 20s, just to, if you're trying to sell products and services, just to kind of advise you on what you're doing wrong.
Yeah. And I think the homesteading movement that you're seeing a revival of is really helping because I grow along with cut flowers. You know, we have firewood and native, but herbs and veggies and mix the herbs in and just teaching how it's great for pollinators and stuff. That everybody now wants to see that. And it's been really neat to see how it's starting to take off and now it's coming circle again because things my grandfather and my grandmother, you know, on my dad's side that were farmers are like, you know, it's great to see this come back. And my grandfather laughs because they grew their own tobacco. He was a smoker. He goes, I told you those flowers were good for something, you know, and it's just wonderful to see.
Absolutely. Okay, so those are just a few type of customers that you might be encountering. Again, Lindsay has talked a lot about the different marketing channels. You're certainly going to have different customers at different venues. And so much about that is you have to do the research and spend the time. I'm just going to talk a little bit about niche markets. So that's just something very specialized. And this is really important for those of you who are in areas that you perceive to already be saturated. For example, the big bustling farmers markets that are very high end generally already have their flower farmers, right? There's people who have either been there for years or are just so good at what they do that they have a big customer base. And so as a new grower, it's hard to kind of get into those kind of markets, and different strategies for getting in really have to do with setting yourself apart. So for example, I read a post on the Flower Farmers Facebook group, the big group that I think most people are in. If you're not, you should be, because you do learn a lot from other people's experiences, even if you don't post. It's called Flower Farmers, I think, or flower farming maybe. But this woman was so excited because she had gotten into the Union Square Market in New York City, which during the normal season would be impossible. But she had forced tulips, and she went and sold out and did a fantastic job. So that's one way to separate yourself. And there are growers that have made their mark by strictly growing local flowers off season, which requires a lot in terms of infrastructure with high tunnels or being able to grow indoors. However, it does set you so far apart, and then you can enjoy your summers off or do something else in the summer. Also, just the type of flowers you're growing and what you're using it for. If you had a business that relied primarily on natives and herbs, for example, and you could really set yourself apart from that, the market might take you, especially if maybe you're selling native plants along with your native flowers. But there's different ways to really define your niches, and this isn't limited to flowers. You see it all the time with Walmart versus Nordstrom's. Pricing, certainly there's luxury, moderate, and discount pricing. This can be whether you're talking about bouquets or socks, right? And at the end of the day, there might not be that much difference in quality. A lot just has to do with the marketing and the customer's perceived value. I will say that with flowers, so much of the pricing goes hand in hand with how the flowers are presented. And if they are a very clean aesthetic that, you're really showcasing the flowers for their own intrinsic value, then that's where you can get into the luxury markets. However, there are a lot of people out there with huge hearts, and they say, I want my flowers to be for everybody. I want to be the value flower seller, which is a lovely sentiment, but things you have to be really careful about. Number one, you don't want to be underselling your competition. I know it's tempting. Especially if you're a hobby grower or a small grower whose income isn't really dependent, you're trying to break into the market. So you're going to be the queen of the $5 bouquet. Well, you're not going to make any money, and they're going to lose income and hate your guts. And they're going to tell their customers, oh, look what this horrible person is doing. So we see this a lot with sunflowers. Actually, people grow the black oil sunflowers. They don't know anything about post-harvest handling. They take these blown out sunflowers, bunch them up, a dozen for $5 or something ridiculous. And people will buy them at first, and then hopefully will be turned off when they get pollen all over themselves or petals are all over their tables. But that happens. So if you do want to be the budget option, you have to really think about how you're going to do that. Are you going to do it with super common, easy to grow or forage flowers like zinnia with a little bit of goldenrod in it or something, that maybe 3 or 4 flowers? You can certainly have a lower priced option. One of my friends actually sells little posies that are just small little $5 bouquets that are tiny, tiny, but precious, and at least get people in the door buying, right? But definitely don't make a huge, beautiful bouquet that you put a lot of time and that you definitely put labor into producing and sell it for $5. That's not good for anybody. Demographics, we've talked a lot about that, but if the demographic you're trying to reach doesn't live in your area, you're really going to have to figure out, how am I going to get my product to my demographic? And there's different ways to do that. Obviously, there's shipping, you can travel to the destination, you can work through cooperatives, etc. But that's just, if your demographic, your ideal customer doesn't live in your area, then you need to get to them, because they're not going to come to you for the most part. The visitors maybe, but also level of quality. You can, you can get your customer to understand the difference between a high quality dahlia versus a common zinnia, then that's a possibility, especially when you're getting into the weddings. I think the brides are willing to spend more on very special flowers for their special day. And we've already talked about the psychographics, and then again, geographic. And it's pretty easy to come up with your geographic demographics. Certainly you can, go through, I think I have a slide on this, but go through your local chamber of commerce. There's U.S. Census that you can really learn a lot about income levels, age, etc. But yeah, so whatever niche you choose, for example, me choosing only dried flowers, mostly a lifestyle situation with me, but also just because I feel like it is something that would appeal to my customer. It's definitely a strategic business decision. And certainly you can target that small market better than, say, Walmart, who's just putting out what another friend of mine calls Skittles bouquets that are just all over the place with color and style and type of flower. Then you're more likely to get your niche customer. Okay. So before you go into a niche product or market, you want to ask yourself, can I quickly identify who this customer is? If you're brand new in the business and you don't know who your customer is, it's probably a better idea to be more of a generalist until you identify that person. But if you do want to quickly identify this person, put it out there, see if it sells. Anticipate your volume. You know, may only be a limited market for dried flowers in your area, or wedding flowers, etc. So the volume might not be enough to give you the lifestyle you want. And does it have sufficient growth potential? So yeah, for hobbyists, they're very small scale, supplemental income. It's not as big of a concern, but if you do want to grow, make a living, expand your opportunities, then you really need to be sure that the niche market will support that. Okay, so but here's some things that all of these customers we've talked about value that most reasonable Americans these days value and are good talking points on your product. Definitely emphasize the fact that it's hyper local. Something they're getting the flowers pretty much right out of the field compared to if they were shipped. Peak freshness and beauty, right? They just can't get anything like this in the store. The environmental aspects, your growing practices can be promoted. Most of us don't use heavy duty, awful pesticides or Roundup or anything like that on our flowers. Number one, because we don't have to. For the most part, with proper growing practices, flowers are pretty resilient. Very, very clean, low impact. Vase life, that speaks for itself. If you're doing everything right with post-harvest and transit, etc., they can expect to enjoy those flowers for a long time, much more than they would be with store-bought flowers. And that cuts down on waste. Obviously, people are very concerned about what's going into landfills, carbon footprint, etc. Buying from you, definitely they're doing their part to reduce waste. And then your product is so unique. You grow cultivars that cannot be found in big box stores. It's great to have documentation or pictures, anything to tell your story. This is where social media can really help you out, where you are selling your lifestyle and your values, and really special to convey to customers. So this is the little farmers market at our community garden. If you're ever in Delaware County, New York, please come to Birdsong Farm Community Garden. We have a working flower farm that's on the smallish side, and it's mostly volunteer driven, but we try to grow all the varieties. And many of our customers are actually visitors who are at the garden to visit the garden. And the interesting thing is we have probably 18 to 20 vendors every week. And one week in kind of early-ish spring, we had a group of young farmers selling mostly kale. And they were so disappointed because a lot of the customers who were there say, oh, it's beautiful, but I grow my own kale. And then I said, we don't want to go to a market where most of the people are already garden. So I think it's just the kale's not as popular as people think it is, but it actually makes a good, later in the season, you can put it in arrangements. So. Okay, that's what I have today, just my musings on customers, narrowing in who is that person. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd love to have further discussions, questions, throw it out there if you're looking to dial in. Okay, so I did get a question about what are the best tools and apps for creating flyers and marketing content? And Hannah spoke up with Canva. Yeah, that has become very, very popular. You can use it both mobile, desktop. It's very user-friendly and intuitive, and the fonts and backgrounds and things like that are already kind of viral, tested, proven, meant to appeal to the modern aesthetic. I'm an old lady, so I'm not an old lady. I use PowerPoint a lot for things just because that's kind of what I came up with. It's easy. I also use Adobe Illustrator. But as far as something that is low cost or free, Canva is a very good option.